Okay, I wanted to try and make a video about purification and awakening. Not really to give any definitive answers, but to keep bringing the subject of the body, the emotion, the beliefs, the mind, to keep bringing it back into the conversation about awakening, and also to inspire people who are stuck with the body, stuck with the emotions, stuck with the belief systems, how those aspects of ourselves relate to awakening. This is not a definitive, if you do this, you will awaken. This is not in any way intended to be any sort of answer. It'll probably be full of messy holes and missing bits as I stumble through a really, in many ways, what seems to be a difficult subject. I don't know whether it is really, but it's quite an in-depth subject, and I'm going to see what I can do. I mean, this may be kind of quite a long video, so we'll see. First thing I'm going to do is read something, and then I'm going to try and break this conversation down into like 3 major aspects: body purification, emotional purification, and mental purification, and the integration therein. I think if you're interested in one of those and not the others, I'll try and leave some timestamps, and we'll just see how it goes. I'm not sure how well I can talk about this, but I'm willing to give it a try, since actually it's been my personal experience. And this, I couldn't speak about these things unless they were my direct experience. So they're not coming from book knowledge or anything I've been taught. They're coming from the ruthless journey of fire through illness, through emotional cathartic release, and how those two relate together. And then, of course, you know, anybody who's on any journey of transformation and awakening will have to meet their own mind and their own belief systems, and I sure as hell have done that. So bear with me if you're interested. It might be a 30-minute video or so, so sit back, get yourself a smoothie or a vodka or something, and let's go. So, purification and awakening, clearing the temple for grace. There's a great misunderstanding on the spiritual path. Many imagine that awakening is about transcending the human, the body, the emotion, the mind, as if they are obstacles to something higher. But my experience has shown the opposite. Purification of the body, of emotion, and of the mind does not cause awakening. It doesn't create enlightenment, but it clears the temple. It allows the light of consciousness to enter, to stay, to live through you. Without that purification, awakening can remain a beautiful glimpse, a moment of truth that never fully descends into the cells of your being. So this isn't about striving for purity or for perfection. It's about love. Love for the vessel that carries awareness. Love for the body, this extraordinary instrument of life that we so often neglect or abuse. If the body is heavy, toxic, inflamed, or numb, it's difficult for awareness to rest easily within it. It's like a window smeared with dust. The light is there, but it can't quite shine through. And the same goes for the emotions. When emotion is suppressed, or when it runs wild and uncontrolled, the inner space is distorted. To purify emotion means to allow it, to let it move through awareness without grasping, without repression. Then emotion becomes energy, and energy becomes life force, and life force becomes love. And finally, the mind, the endless commentator, the judge, the fixer. Mental purification is not about controlling thought. It's about seeing the noise for what it is and no longer feeding it. When the mind quietens, clarity and insight naturally arise. So yes, purification is not the same as awakening, but it's part of the embodiment of awakening. It's what allows realization to flower into life itself. To cleanse the temple is an act of devotion, not to reach some imagined state, but to honor the sacredness of existence itself. So take care of your body, face your emotions, tend to your mind, not because it will make you enlightened, but because it is a gesture of love toward the divine living through you. Okay. Body purification. I don't really like to talk about this because it gets so entangled and people suffer so much with their bodies, and a lot of people have reached out after a previous video. What can I do about this? What can I do about that? What can I do about this ailment, this illness? And truly, I don't have the answers for that. I know really what happened to me, and I know how almost fundamental the ground of purification of the body has been in my life. Because I'll give you a quick synopsis of how it was for me. You know, I indulged heavily during my 20s and 30s, addicted in all sorts of ways, and a very, very heavy drinker, and a lot of drugs, a lot of chemicals being put into the body. I lived very badly, very, very badly, and didn't take care of myself ever, and just abused my body that was riddled with the tightness of toxic emotions. So for me, emotions and body system were very, very entangled, as they are for people. And my liver was shot, my kidneys were shot. I was really a mess for many, many years, and I won't bore you with lots of the details, but it came to a crisis at the end of the century, beginning of this century, where I had to go and do something about it. So I went off with Amodama, my wife, to a clinic in India for Panchakarma, Ayurvedic treatment. And that was a purification. That was the first purification that I'd ever done. And it was a 6-week, profound, full-body detoxification to get out the toxins that had buried themselves in my body. And of course, it created a huge cascade of pain and release and emotional catharsis, because emotions and body follow each other around. They just do. Everything stored up in the emotional body is also stored up somehow in either the what we presume is the physical body, the organ structure or part of the nervous system and immune system, parasympathetic system, all of these kind of systems, the adrenal system, or else it just lives in there as an energetic tightness. And so once you start on the path of purification of the body, pretty quickly the emotions are going to follow, because they start getting stirred up as well, because these two things are intertwined. So my first experience of purification was horrific and very, very painful, and everything kind of sort of started coming out, but I think my defense mechanism of the body would only let it come out to a certain extent, and then that set me on course for the next, I would say, 15 years of major illness, because I got diagnosed with autoimmune illness of inflammatory bowel disease, and the prognosis was medication and surgery, but I chose to go a different path, and I chose to go down, because I'd had some experience and I had some advice, to go down the path of nature. And so I went down the path of nature, and that meant that I had to take a lot of responsibility for what I was doing. And even without knowing what it was, because most illness is when you don't medicate it and you do go down a path of healing and you are willing to purify and cleanse the body system, it's a path of the unknown. You don't know, really, because it's not a linear path. It's an intuitive, guided path. Full of mistakes and errors and successes, and and it's a very long path. So I went down that road, and the purification involved more trips to India and more cleansing and more healing, and things got a lot worse, a lot worse and a lot worse before, after about, I would say, 15 years I had that autoimmune illness, and it still has left its fragrance, left its calling card with me still to this day, but I'm very healthy these days, certainly on the immune system, digestive level. But that required me to cleanse and heal the body and to start taking care of it. That's the point here, is that the body gets very, very choked up. It's the storehouse of a lot of things. It's the storehouse of karma. It's the storehouse of all the tightness, all the rigidity, all the insults that we've carried around, all the insults that we've carried. They all live in the body system. And also so do all of the toxins, all of the chemicals, all of the things that we haven't been able to digest. I did a whole weekend, I think, once on the metaphor of digestion, of how actually on a certain very, very deeply profound level, we are designed to be digesters of experience on whatever level that is. And the idea is that we're digesting the world, and then we're assimilating what is good and what we need for the benefit of ourselves, the entity of us, but also energetically, and then we eliminate what is bad, what is unnecessary, what is toxic, the waste product, and that's reflected in our whole digestive process. So we're assimilators, but we don't do that very well. We don't do that at all well, because we're so clogged up with stuff, with toxins, with all sorts of undigested matter on the physical level and on the emotional, mental level. And this is why purification doesn't lead to awakening, but it cleans the temple. It cleans the body-mind system so that whatever starts to come through actually passes through a lot clearer. And this is an absolutely true kind of reflection from me about how it is. Because when my body was a toxic, seething mess of pain and dysfunction and heat and anxiety and stress and constriction and gas and, you know, all of these kind of things. So it just took all of my attention, took every ounce of everything that I had just to deal with the body system. And so by and by, when I introduced enough light into the system, and what happens is that you do need to start fasting, to taking care of the system, to, you know, drink and eat a lot of more healthy foods, and to see where the addictions lie in the habits of reaching for things. You reach for this food because it brings comfort, but it also brings sweetness and introduces over-sweetness into the system. You like these potatoes, these potato chips, these fatty things because they bring comfort. Sugar brings love. The fatty things bring comfort and safety and grounding. But they all, particularly when they're driven by the unfulfilled human being, they all have a consequence that builds up over time. When I realized what was actually going on for me was that it wasn't a sudden, you know, most chronic illnesses don't come on suddenly. Most chronic illnesses are the drip, 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 drip over time. The drip of toxic foods, the drip of unconscious emotions, the drip of unresolved, unprocessed digestion, drip, drip, drip. And eventually the bucket starts getting full and it tips over and we start to experience symptoms. This is what happens for a lot. And I'm not saying all, and I'm not a doctor, and I haven't really got a clue. But what we experience is the overflowing of the bucket that has been building up for really quite a long time. And so then we're called to pay attention, but we can't because we're so freaked out about what is actually happening to us. And it's a very serious thing to turn your attention, whatever state. Don't wait until that time comes. Don't wait until it's later on, further down the line, to actually say, you know, I'm just going to take a little bit better care of myself. I'm going to eat from the outside aisles of the stores where all the vegetables and fruits are, and lay off that stuff. I'm going to lay off that stuff, and I'm going to start experimenting because I want to honor this existence to the best of my capacity. Whether it works, who knows? It's a journey into the unknown. Everything is a journey into the unknown. But this is an invitation to see the connection, to see particularly how the emotional body and the physical body are moving along like that in tandem with each other. And you start affecting one and the other starts saying, oi, me too, I'm coming as well. And so that is a very clumsy talk about body purification. Emotional purification. Allowing the emotions to move, to be felt fully without repression or indulgence. How grief, anger and fear are doorways when met with awareness. Emotions are intended to flow, just like the body is intended to flow. The liver, for instance, you know, when I was told and I realized that my liver was tight, like this, really tight. I was just holding on to the anger of the past, holding on to bitterness, holding on to the toxins from all the chemical drugs that I'd taken. And the kidneys were like desperately trying to do their job, the kidneys and adrenals, because they were so full of fear, deep-rooted fear, existential fear that I wouldn't survive. And so it is with the emotions. They're held onto. They're held onto as a tactic, as a way of survival, buried in with the body system, the emotion system. And so these two systems live side by side, embedded in each other. And so the emotions that we carry, they're intended to flow. But we're frightened of letting them flow because the build-up, particularly the backlog, same with the body, the backlog through time has meant that we feel like if we just start to, even if we knew how to start letting them flow, we'd be overwhelmed, we'd be drowned in the ocean, the sea of our own emotions, stored up emotions. But it doesn't really happen. You know, what happens is potentially a lot of tears, a lot of freak out, a lot of heat, a lot of, you know, distress. But these things are necessary almost. I'm not talking about being crazy, I'm talking about if you can find ways of doing these things. The body, in a way, you know, sometimes I think, you know, why not lead with the body? Because the body will show you, the body will tell you. The body is a great reflector of where the emotions are at. Yeah, and as soon as you start making changes, we want to control that environment. We desperately want to control the body environment, because I think in some way we know that if we control the body environment, we're actually still managing to control the emotion environment. So we hold on to that idea. So if it works, start with the body. Start purifying the body. See, it's not an ascetic thing. It's a love thing. It's not a harsh thing. It's a love. It's an act of beauty. It's an act of grace that we do. Neglecting it, trying to reach for an exalted, awakened state and sort of deny the whole of the organism, including the body, just doesn't work, because it doesn't allow the energy of light to filter into the whole system, because there's so much tightness and darkness. Darkness of the shadow, darkness of the unattended to, darkness of everything that's been denied. And so the light can't filter in there unless there's a willingness for that to happen. That's the most important point. You get a glimpse, you know it. Loads of people that we work with have these experiences. You know, but then what? Then embodiment, you know. It's not as if the embodiment really has anything to do with the body in that sense, but it does have to do with light and darkness. It does have to do with allowing the light, the energy of light, to filter into the whole system, so that it filters right down into our core and into the cells themselves. And the emotions are exactly, you know, the same. They're stored up energy that really want to flow. And we're frightened of the flow because we think it'll drown us. And so we hover, we waver, we hang out, we try and navigate them, and it takes time. I'm not saying the emotional body is easy to deal with, but it's another aspect of the body. Physical body, nervous system body, adrenal system body, emotional body. It also needs a deep attending to, because it wants to be loved. It wants to be included in the whole thing. This is a way of, all this is a way of coming home to ourselves, to the holistic whole that we are. And so include the emotional body. Mental purification. Letting go of belief systems, mental loops, and opinions that cloud perception. Developing a mind that serves awareness, not resists it. Self-inquiry. The willingness. See, as you create more space within yourself, or as you start to undo through a purification, through simply changing habits and saying, I'm ready to purify, to detoxify, some of this stuff, yeah, some of this more dense stuff that I've been carrying. As that happens, so the chain reaction builds, because the body is connected to the emotions, and the emotions are both driven by and the driver of the belief systems that we carry. And so the whole deck of cards, the whole structure of self, starts to kind of dissolve on a certain level. But that dissolving is a dissolving into beauty, into love. Of course it feels quite scary for a while, but actually it's the dissolving into the inner harmony of us. And so, you know, self-inquiry, wondering, contemplating, looking at what you believe and why, and how that belief has come into fruition, and where does that belief come from. Have you got a whole baggage of inherited beliefs that actually don't even really belong to you? As most people have. Most people's beliefs are kind of born when they're children, born through relationships with parents, driven, you know, by the attention or lack of attention, or abuse, or guidance, or absence, or whatever personality types those people were, and the educators, your teachers, your religious, the whole culture, and of course belief systems, believing, you know, the inherent belief systems on a deeper level than that. Many people carry a belief, for instance, that I need to prove my worth by doing this, or this, because inherently I'm not worthy. And that is a belief that I carry around because it was proved to me by how my parents operated. Another one, I believe that I need another to love me so that I can feel whole in life, because I don't feel whole, I feel less than. Another one is believing that somehow we're shameful. There's something to be ashamed about, less than. Another one is that the world is a terrible place. Another one is that I'm oversensitive and I can't deal with the world. There are an endless series of foundational root belief systems that actually it's really worth getting to, but you can't get to them usually because of the loops that go on and on and on and on. And a preoccupation with the looping. See, you know, the great correlate, you know, just as I think about it, the great correlate is as long as we're only paying attention to the narratives of the loop, then we never have a look deep down and see what is actually really going on. And that is the same as politics. That's the same as what is happening in the world, in America, writ large. It's like, as long as we're just paying attention to the endless looping of the us versus them, left versus right, yada yada yada, and we never really pay attention to what is going on deeper down, deeper down. And that is a terrible thing. And that's so it is with us. If we don't get to what is happening deeper down, we never really heal, because we're just caught in the flotsam and jetsam of our mental body, of our emotional body, or our physical body, because we're only ever really dealing with symptoms. The symptoms of the physical body say, I've got to pay attention to this symptom, and the symptoms of the emotional body are this drama, can't stand this, or that's a terrible thing, or this shouldn't have happened. And the drama of the mental body is, I don't believe that should have happened, I don't believe this is right, that's wrong. And all of these things float around on the surface, and they're all symptoms. And what I'm inviting here is to get down into the source material. Let's get to the source material. And sometimes you can only really get to the source material through purification. Don't turn your back on purification. sounds terrible, but it's not. What do you think Jesus went into the desert for? For 40 days, 40 nights. Purify himself, whatever was still being carried or whatever was not necessary anymore. It's a toxic life. It was then, it is now. So we have to find good ways, good clear ways of dealing with it, because then the divine light can enter more clearly, more harmoniously, and it can radiate itself out harmoniously, clearly, effortlessly, because we're not standing in the way. And it has the opportunity to filter through, because we are great filterers. And we don't hold on to the stuff that creates the problem, because we're designed to flow. That's it. These purifications, my friend, do not cause awakening. They simply remove the static. Awakening is grace, but grace needs a receptive instrument. Be that instrument. The spiritual path is not about escaping the human. It's about embodying the divine in the human form, and that requires clarity, simplicity, and purification. All right, I've come in at 31 minutes. I do hope some of it has spoken to you. Maybe just a snippet here, maybe a snippet there, maybe it's inspired you, maybe it's pissed you off. But I hope that that is good as well, in the sense that it's stirred something up, and maybe that's the start of some kind of purification. If you stayed with me for the whole 30 minutes, bless you. And otherwise, I'll see you again soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.